Thank you, Sarah. Hi, Jean-Marc. Thanks for joining us. We have many topics to cover with you today. As Sarah briefly mentioned, we want to talk about your own experience with your estates, which you've done such an incredible job with, but we also want to talk more widely about the research that you've done and your work with INRA, with the research at a national level. But if we could start with the Roussillon. One of the things that you're known for and that you've been so successful in is taking what was a perceived weakness of the region, or really a commercially weakness in terms of the style of wine that was being made, this very distinctive, the sweet red wines, but that were losing market share. But recognizing you still had incredible old vine stock, you didn't want to lose that. So how did you turn it into a positive? Could you kind of just talk us through your process for that?
Yeah. Actually, thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you. I will say when I came 25 years ago, the sweet wine, as you were saying, was declining. But this business in the past was so good for the producers that they didn't want to do like some other people from maybe the Languedoc, where they pull out the vineyard and put new varietals like Chardonnay, Sauvignon, Cabernet, Merlot. And here in the Roussillon, because maybe the place is much more hilly, very dry place, very poor, fertile, very poor soil. People decided to maintain actually those vines, which at that time were old, but maybe not so old.
How old would that mean?
Old at that time was maybe 40, 50 years old. And today they are more than 80 or 90 years old. But what was good for the fortified wine, this place was producing more than 90% of the total European fortified wine. So it was quite a big place in that kind of wine. But to produce that kind of wine, you needed to have at least 15 to 16% volume alcohol, and you were not allowed to produce more than 3-4 tons per hectare. So that was a perfect match for Grenache, Grenache Blanc, Grenache Gris, Grenache Noir, Muscat, planted in slopes, and making that kind of juice, which was amazing, but only used for sweet wine. When I came, that kind of wine was declining, so we decided to take profit of it, just to make some nice red table wine or white table wine.
Important to say, using the same vines.
Using the same vines, yeah. And the point was, I've been doing the flying winemaker for many years, and I was saying that in all world we were doing just Carignan, and I was feeling very comfortable with those grapes, but I was thinking that all was the same actually at the end. Big companies, big blocks, big yield most of the time, and making good wine, not where I was not upset about the quality, but maybe upset about losing diversity, yeah. losing something that makes you a little bit different. And every time I was coming back in Perpignan, we were landing and seeing the seas, the mountains, the different kind of terroir. But overall, the fact that we had the chance in this place to have a lot of old vines. I mean, because of the sweet wine, we have old vines. And most of the people were pulling out because this kind of old vines were not planted the right way for the mechanization.
Yeah. But as you were saying, the geography of your region actually saved you in many ways, because it wasn't really possible to do mechanization.
Yeah, in some places, like I will say Maury or maybe Banyuls, it is quite difficult because it's very steep, and people in the past, they didn't plant rows, they just plant the vines where they could, because there's a lot of schist, like black slate.
So using bush vines.
Yeah, and it's all bush vine, and it was so difficult to make mechanization. But even in a flat place, people were used to make bush vine, because to make a fortified wine, they didn't want to have too much kilo per hectare, and that was the best way to manage the quantity. So at the end, when I arrived, I've seen many hectares to rent, to take, to try, or whatever the system we did. But we tried to put in place a system which was able to make wine with those old wines with a good way of working, knowing that that kind of grapes are always a bit more expensive to produce than trellis.
Yeah.
But at the end, it was such an heritage to have those grapes just around us. We every time we can afford take another one, a new one, and be gentle with it, we'll do it.
Did you have resistance from your neighbors or fellow viticultors to stop making the traditional wine of the region?
No, I wouldn't say resistance. People, sometimes they are curious. Sometimes some maybe can be a bit jealous, but the curiosity, I think, is most of the time what happened. They come and we talk, and I will say we are not the only one in the Roussillon having all vineyards. In the Roussillon, all vineyards is a rule. Actually, I will say maybe today in the Roussillon there is 20,000 hectares, yep. And maybe we still have 6,000-7,000 hectares more than 30, 40 years old in bush vine. So it's quite common to find people. The point is maybe today all the people are trying to plant with trellis and irrigation and doing what they can most to be better mechanized. Yeah. When in our company, maybe following the plantation where we need to do, we prefer to come back to bush vine again. Overall, for the climate changing, than keeping going doing trellis as most of the people are doing today.
Something that we talked about several times today is in order to recognize the value of old vines, there's a need to bottle them separately and to label them as such and to market them as such. What's your opinion on that, and what's been your experience of that?
At the beginning, we were so small that even our entry-level wine was made with very old vines. After knowing better and better our sites, our terroir, as the French will say, we decided to be more and more focused in a reverse viticulture, knowing that that kind of terroir of site with that kind of old vines could make maybe that kind of wine, which has to be sold at that price to be profitable. Okay. So we try to make a lot of effort in the winemaking, in the viticulture. It's not just because you have old vines, you have a good wine. Yeah. You need to be with the plant. You need to help the plant to get to the point. And after, for sure, the winemaking has also to be maybe more delicate, more detailed, to get to the point where the wine is good enough to be on the shelf at that price or whatever.
We haven't talked much this morning, but we haven't talked at all actually about the role of oak aging. Do you find that with the old vines, there is a difference in approach in the amount of oak you're using? Like, do you use less because you want to kind of put the complexity of the wine itself in relief? What's your approach to barrels and old vines?
Yes, I think it's not just because old vines, but in the Roussillon, I will say 50% of our grapes is Grenache. And after we have some very good old vines from Carignan. And if not, we use a little bit the Syrah too. But Carignan and old vines, by a genetic way, doesn't have much tannins. Mm-hmm. So we don't need, and we don't want to cover the wine with oak, because the oak will match
the flavors.
The wine. So it's not just because of the old vines, but I think in the Roussillon barrels, it's not working well with wine. What we like to do is we like to age the wine in demi-muid, maybe in a big barrel shade, or maybe in wooden tank or in foudre. It's much more the way we work with all our red wines than working with.
Yeah. And once you'd made the switch to these dry reds from the old Grenache and had such success with it, did you find an interest and did you help other winemakers in the region to do a similar thing with their own old vines?
I will say that, as I was saying before, over 20,000 hectares, we still have 7,000 hectares. And you don't need to be winemaker to see that grapes coming from the old vines, most of the time, if you take care of the vineyard, are more balanced. Not the grape, but the plant. You can see the plant very more balanced. Maybe the good point with bush vine is you have a better microclimate in the soil. You have some carbohydrates into the old trunk and root more. So the plant.
Can you explain that a little more? Why would that be the case?
Actually, when you have most of the time when you have a bush vine, you have more wood. Actually, you have different arms.
Yeah.
Because they are old, they are big arms, and we have a lot of carbohydrates inside. We have a lot of stock of food, I would say, inside to help the plant to grow until the flowering time. And some years, as you know, we can have a very bad drought here in the Roussillon. And having that big vines allowed us to make the plant growing better.
Yeah, so they're better protected.
Yeah, because in the Roussillon we are not allowed to have irrigation. So we have to play with much more with the plant and the soil, and we always have a look to the rain we've got in autumn and winter to balance the pruning, and to be very careful not having too much grapes. If not, if it's a dry year, we won't get to the point.
And we have here a presentation. Let me just ask you a few things about the value. So one of the things that you've done so successfully is to establish Domaine Lafarge as really being innovative and high quality and worth paying a higher price for. Roussillon, and certainly the Languedoc more generally, has difficulties, despite the fact that we know the richness of the region, the beauty of the region, and in a place like Roussillon, so much genetic variety. Do you have advice for other producers who want to maximize their old vines and who want to find this, a successful way to share the story of their older vines? Are there any learnings that you have had?
No, I think people is learning quick, overall young people are coming back to the road today, coming back to the nature, and when you are, as you are saying, we're living in a fantastic place where in some way you go, you travel, you walk a little bit, and you've seen all vines in a very nice surrounding. You cannot imagine making a bad wine out of it. So I think it's just a point of going to detail. It's not just about having all vines, but taking care very much of the old vines. Overall today, I can see we are seeing more and more difference with growers today, because we have the climate change, we have this climate warming, and you have to be, even if the microclimate of a bush vine is maybe better, we feel, than a trellis, you have to make when you remove the leaves or when you cut the cane, when you have to do it in a perfect time, just to be sure that the plant and overall the grapes will mature in good conditions. So you have to be more aware of what we're doing in viticulture, when in the past, what people wanted, it was just a sugar level to make their fortified wines. So it's not just about all vines, but understanding better the plant to make the wine you desire to make.
Thank you. And if we speak a little more global, well, actually, before I go on to globally, would you like to go through the presentation? Are there things here that we should be drawing our attention to?
No, I think just to talk maybe a bit more about the Roussillon, because I was saying that the Roussillon has a chance to have more all vines. More or less, maybe 60% of the grapes will be less than 25 years old. So it's also a place where people are renovating. But we have about 30% more than 30, 20% more than 50. And in our place, for example, we have like 20 hectares more than 80 years old. Yeah. And it's 80 to 100. And it's good because some of these grapes were here before Phylloxera. And it is interesting to see how the plant is really stable. The plant it can be a very dry summer or whatever. We always have a nice acidity. We have a very good pH, and which make the wine interesting actually.
Are you tracking the resistance to drought and to other issues for the difference between these young vineyards, so planted since the 1980s, and the old vineyards?
What I will say is all vineyards is always in a better shape at vintage than the young vineyard. But also as I was saying before, we are planting more and more in bush vine again, even if the mechanization we cannot pick by machine and we have to go by hand, whatever. But we are feeling that the old vines are working so well, also because they're in bush vine. I think that's the two parameters. which make the wine so unique in our place, because we are not allowed to irrigate. So in other places with irrigation, maybe it will be different, but in our place, it's very important to have some leaves making shade with the grapes, and this microclimate inside the vine is also very, important. We have, I can read the slide.
Yeah, let's stick on this slide for a moment. But actually, can I just go back to, we just saw your range of wines, and one of them there you do name. I was happy that we saw that, because I was going to speak about it, that you have the Centenaire. So you are making it a feature of the wines itself.
Yeah. And this wine is always it's good because every year are different, really different. But to find the Centenaire style has much more stability year after year when we pick the grapes than nearly all the other wines. The wine is very stable. As I was saying before, acidity is the same, baume is the same, and date of picking more or less the same. And it's quite, and so I think it's maybe all vines, but it's also bush vine. I think bush vine is impacting us so much in our place.
It's brilliant. And so it's interesting, because we had before somebody talking about the pergola system, the traditional pergola system, actually protecting the vines of their region far more than the modern trellising systems. And in fact, you're finding exactly the same thing. So if we stick with this slide and then widen the conversation to your work with INRA, with research universities or research programs, which you're doing not just in France, but with other countries as well. Could you talk to us a little bit? You're looking at grape varieties internationally. Could you talk to us about your research and what the aims are?
Actually, just to make a point, I'm not a researcher. I'm very curious, and I'm another.
You open your mind to many things and help people.
We have a good relationship, but we are not doing research with them. We have actually some thesis in our place in Domaine Lafarge. We do with two agronomists and with Supagro Montpellier, with the Professor de Loire, where we try to think about the viticulture of the next 20 years. So we know that bush vine is one of the key, but we also have to think about the 80% of vineyards, which we hope some of them will become all vines. And so we have different kind of studies. For sure, the canopy management, less cane we have, less transpiration we have. The soil management with the carbon sequestration, water balance, but also we grow some fertilizer into the block. We monitor a lot we have temperature control in the vine, temperature control in the air. We have a look to the soil, and actually the thesis is the quality of soil can impact on the quality of the plant and can impact on the quality of the grape. And in this point, we are doing that in medium age vineyard, like 20 years old, but we also do it in vineyards more than 50 years old. And it's quite interesting to see that whatever, maybe not whatever, but like the two last years, which been one has been very wet and the other one has been very dry. We can see that the old vines are maintaining better the quality of the data we have until the point we pick them.
And so a few things about that. One, something that I hear more and more over the last really only year or two is a movement back towards, certainly here in Bordeaux, moving back towards no-till farming, leaving the vineyards as much as possible with crop cover in order to lower the temperature when you're getting these hot summers. Is that something that you're finding in the Roussillon? Is it helpful does it work with bush vines, bush trellising, bush training? What's your opinion?
Yeah, in Bordeaux, they don't have the same condition of raining that we have.
Sure.
So we cannot do exactly the same. We do plant grass, but when the grass is being to be in competition with the vine, we have to cut, but we don't plug after. We just cut and maintain the root from the grass with the soil, just to be able to refresh a little bit the soil. and to also have the root having some allowing the soil to have a better oxygen penetration. And that's about what we do. If all goes well, we will be able maybe to have a natural fertilization of about 20 units of nitrogen for the vineyard, which help also the vineyard to get to get through the summer. And that's the way we work for the growing of the grass.
And the research collaboration that you've been doing with the agricultural research organizations, can you talk to us a bit about, so coming out of the Roussillon and how, you know, the results that you've seen in comparing different varieties in different regions?
Yes, but what I have to say first is in the Roussillon, most of the grapes are Grenache and Carignan. So we are very focused on this kind of grapes. And first, it's fair to say that the association of Grenache and Carignan with the Rostock 110R is known to be the best solution to face climate change in our place. Those behavior. I mean, Grenache and Carignan will close their stomata as the evaporation demand of the atmosphere increase. When varietal like Syrah, Shiraz, for example, we kill the stomata open and then transpire more water. So you have to be careful also about choosing the right rootstock and the right varietal and the right clone into the varietal to be sure that when it's too hot, the plant can be able to protect by itself, which not of them are doing in an extreme condition. After, the point is even in the same variety, you can have differences between one clone to the other. So it's quite difficult to make conclusion. As you know, research is always stand forever. You know, it's very difficult to get a very nice conclusion. But what we are trying to check with the professor we're working with, Professor Deloire, is maybe doing some selection of very old vines, maintaining very well, to try to have part of this genetic back into our research model, just to be sure that the quality of grapes we have from the old vines most of the time are also better compared to the young vines, because the young vines has been developed like 30 years ago to make good volume.
Yeah.
We are living in a place in the Languedoc, but I think it was the same in most of the places where people 30 years ago, when they were planting a vineyard, they wanted to see grapes.
All countries around the world.
I want to. I'm also a vigneron and I want to have grapes. But sometimes the selection has been losing some very nice genetic, doing maybe a little bit grapes, but a better concentration. And we still have a few hectares like that sparing, and that could be a good idea of coming back to the root, actually, coming back to that kind of DNA. After, to compete a little bit, because we are talking about the climate changing, what we try to do too is maybe to plant like 5% of our total potential of grapes, which will genetically make more acidity. Talking about, I don't know, in our place, all varietals we were doing more acidity, were Picpoul, but Picpoul can be Picpoul white or Picpoul noir. So black Picpoul. We also have some Trepat, which is from Catalonia, much more Catalonia south than the place we are, but we are neighbor. We are the same family a few centuries ago. And also Touriga, because Touriga Nacional is a bit better in terms of acidity. So
and these are allowed within the appellation?
No, in the appellation, it's not allowed. So we are talking about doing trials.
Yeah.
1 hectare, 1.5 hectares, and we're making trials with the university. But the idea will be maybe this one. But when we talk about Roussillon, we talk much more about Grenache. And if you see, even today, people think nothing is moving in Grenache, but we have the crossings are done by the nature. And we have grapes like Pelout, which is a very old Grenache from the past.
Yeah.
which moved to the Grenache Noir. Another one has been the Couston, which is a very old kind of Grenache, with a mix of Grenache with another grapes called Aubin. We have the Alicante Boucher, which is a blend of Grenache and another crossing variety, which is Aramon and Teinturier. So Caladoc, Grenache crossed with Scott. So many kind of Grenache today, which some of them are declining, like maybe Caladoc is quite difficult in very, very tough and dry places, when Marcelin is doing maybe better. And I think the more inspiring today I've seen has been thanks to the INRA in France, where they have a collection called Alain Bouquet Collection, which is inter-specific crossings between some US plant being able to resist like the mildew powder, botrytis, that kind of diseases, and vinifera. And this person has been developing grapes for 30 to 40 years. And after so many years of crossing, at the end, you can get to the point where you have 1.2% of the US genetic, which make you able to, I wouldn't say resist, but to be more tolerant to diseases, and 99% of the vinifera profile, which at the end in France, but I will say also in the world, people are pushing more and more, which is right, in a very green kind of agriculture, and maybe that kind of crossings, not genetic modifier, but that kind of crossing could be an answer to the future.
And so that is being done currently. What are there programs to get the results of this out more generally to winemakers, or where can they go to find more information about this?
Yes, for example, in INRA from France, south of France, Narbonne, Pêche Rouge, you have plenty of studies about it, and now they are starting selling some of it. I've seen some vineyards
selling the plants themselves.
Yeah, but selling some vines. They're starting. Is still very small. We are part of the people able to make trials because we are working in studies. But I think it's surely part of the future. Idea, I will say it will be nice to get to this point and to cross that kind of grapes with surely one of the best old Carignan, old Grenache, or whatever the old vineyard. I'm talking about.
I'm my guess from knowing from various other regions is at the moment, because it's a test, they're being allowed within say 10% of the overall blend. What are the rules that you're allowed to use these?
Oh no, for us it's just a trial. So if we go, I don't know, if we go 300 hectares, we will be able maybe to plant 1 hectare.
Right. Okay.
Just we are just doing trials, but I know the professions, the viticulture, the vignerons, the structures are pushing to be able to develop that kind of crossings, which has been developed for the last 40 years. We can see we've been also planting some hybrid of the country from Germany, and maybe we still have like 5 to 7% of US of disease.
So non-vitis vinifera.
They are not as a wine profile. They are not as nice. As we feel from our places. I want to make all in the subject, but not as good for the Roussillon.
So then, if we take that, so what we were talking about here essentially is how to protect your vineyard against climate change, as we're saying here, against the changes over the next decade. Is your belief that this idea of hybrids and crossing is the key, or is it more about finding ways to protect these old vines which have proved their resistance over centuries even, or is it about the methods of pruning or the methods, where do you see the most important?
No, I think it's a bit like our simple life. It's many kids who will make maybe the viticulture, who will make maybe still having viticulture in 50 years time. So I think maybe this one is surely something the surgeons should look around, and they look after it. But what I can tell you, we've been very, very much for the last 5 years. The biggest demonstration has been much more the bush vine,
Yeah.
maybe doing better than trellis in the non-irrigated vineyards, which make us thinking a bit more, which in all the poor soil with good slopes and nice exposure, it would be maybe better and clever to go with bush vine again and trying to have the plant very balanced. I think why I want to go to bush vine because to balance the vine is sometimes easier than doing it with trellis. And I think yes, the DNA and all of that will be one of the main topics for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
But we have to find the way to maybe plant all the vineyards east-west instead planting the vineyards south-north. We are also doing some trials about nebulization.
About
Nebulization, having a little bit of water, but very few drops of water near the canopy, just to refresh just a refreshing 1 degree Celsius is making a big difference.
at what point during the growing season is that happening?
That will be, I would say, about Veraison. Yeah. About at that stage. And we also are working in drip irrigation, but at 40 centimeter down, not above the soil, but under.
Yeah.
We are doing many trials, but when we cannot irrigate, it will be much more having slope east or north facing, east west, and just these 2 points make 1 degree difference.
Yeah, and in many ways the exact opposite of the way people will have been historically planting 30 years ago, south facing, intending to maximize the sunshine.
We are not talking anymore about removing leaves, and we try to make of shade on the leaves. When we cut the cane for bush vine, we will cut very early the cane on the west side to have again new leaves growing and protecting very well from the shade, from the sun, the grapes. So I think we have many tools, like I'm sure maybe not my parents, but my grandparents were using, that become again some nice way of working, and not just thinking about new varietals.
So does this give you, if we widen this to Roussillon more generally, do you see that the future for old vines in Roussillon? Do you see that this do you see an impact that what you have done and kind of showing the way forward for the region and showing a way to put true value on the region? Do you see it having a wider impact?
Yeah, I think people anyway, producers, winemakers, they are very convinced that bush vine is better for the result for the wine. After what is delicate in maybe the Roussillon or in the Languedoc-Roussillon is in terms of expense. It's quite it's maybe 20% more expensive to grow a vineyard in bush vine for the old bush vine, and at the same time you have a half crop. So at the end it costs you more than twice cost of the grape. So you have to be able to reflect the price into your bottle, and you have to be sure that you have a better quality. If not, the market will chase it. And I think the point is, when you have all vines, you need to have the best viticulture, you need to have a very good winery, and you need to maintain your wine in very good condition, to maybe to age the wine in bottle a little bit, and having the bottle at the right temperature with the right hygrometry. And it's so many points that most of the people who are listening now, I'm sure, agree with that, and I'm sure they do it in a normal way. But in the Roussillon, because the economics are not fantastic, sometimes one part of the chain is lacking, and the quality can drop and not make the image that we should have.
The extremely difficult thing is which comes first. You need to have the quality in order to attract the higher prices, but you need to have the higher prices to be able to invest in the viticulture. So it's not easy. And what you've done is show the region a way in which that is possible. There were a lot of questions here, which I didn't see because we had the screen up. So Sarah, you might want to come in with, I can tell there's lots of really interesting questions.
There's been a lot of comment. Thank you so much, Jean-Marc.
Yeah, so interesting.
Please stay with us for a few moments longer. Lots of comments, really. A quick question, a comment from Ian Liston Brown on the use of oak, and Jean-Marc's comments on Carignan. Ian mentions that he's noticed a tendency to use semi-carbonic maceration with old vine Carignan, I think, to bring out the texture.
Yeah, if we talk about winemaking, we can make another hour.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, and I mean, basically, there's some great comments in the chat, I think, rather than actual questions. So it's been a very animated chat. You've certainly got people thinking, Jean-Marc, and I think what I would like to do is wrap up. I'd like to thank you for your presentation, which I think has really shown the value. There's a quote I love, attributed to Gustav Mahler, which says, "Tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire." And I think this is very telling for the Roussillon. I mean, what a fantastic region, so rich in identity and in tradition, but it must be expressed in a way that adds value and meaning to the lives of people living there now. And I think this is the challenge, but also the opportunity for thinking in this heritage way about viticulture. So I'd like to thank Jean-Marc and all of our speakers for joining us today and being so candid and open with their experience. So the Amanda, Louisa and Matt from Team Barossa, Andrew Margan in the Hunter, Antonio Capaldo in Fuadi, and of course, Jean-Marc Lafarge. Also, I must thank Jane for your masterful hosting and preparation. I'd also like to thank, please, my colleagues and support, my colleagues Madeline Waters and also Belinda Stone, who've done so much behind the scenes. We will be in touch with all of you who've registered and attended. We are going to have the next online conference in March in 2022. We are also now in a great position to actually hold tastings. We're going to work with our regional network of ambassadors to get people together to taste these old vine wines, because I think that's so powerful. And I think that will really show the value in all senses, that thinking about wine with this heritage viticulture framework not only gives great quality, not only relates to tradition, but actually is a powerful rejuvenative force for the future of wine. So old vines are really about the future in every sense. And the next conference, I hope very much that we will be able to hear from the team at who are working on this project for the value of old vines to the global wine sector. And also, I'm very much hoping that we can hear from great projects going on in Portugal, and watch this space. You know, we're a small team, but I think we are getting there, and I think that's great. Oh, also, can I also please thank all of our members, our sponsors, and trade supporters. You know, couldn't do it without you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jean-Marc.
Thank you.
Fascinating, and your wines are wonderful. So also thank you for
Yes.
those.
I really fancy a glass of wine now, and it's nearly 1 o'clock, so it's fine. Thank you, everyone.
Very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.